Don't let your thoughts control you. Have you ever took the time to understand what somebody means by that? What are they actually trying to say? Well, there's a lot more that goes into it than just a thought, stopping a thought. It's funny because why would we stop a thought? Well, we stop a thought to essentially stop an emotion. The reason that we do that is because emotion is the driver for action. It is what allows us to feel like we're moving in a forward direction. An emotion is a set of physiological responses. And physiological responses are the things that happen inside the body. Some of these are your heart rate, for example, your eye dilation, your respiration, your breathing, right? All these things packaged up together create an emotion. And that is called energy in motion. Now, why is this so important to understand? Because that energy in motion is what we use to actually make a decision, to decide whether we want to go talk to that girl, or be vulnerable with that guy, or try to get that new car, or leave that job. All of it has to do with an emotion. Now, you're always an emotional person. Don't think that sometimes you're emotional and sometimes you're not. It's the intensity of the emotion that we get to experience. But you're always having an emotion. For example, when you decide to go and make that sandwich in your kitchen, well, that was an emotion that drove you to take that action. Why? Well, you had a set of physiological responses that happened in your stomach. Maybe you thought you were hungry, but in actuality, what came first? Well, the feeling of being hungry came first, and then the thought said, well, I'm hungry. Or maybe it's that you're so habitual in your eating routine that to not eat at that time would feel like you're doing something wrong. So this is what makes emotion so interesting and why human beings are very special. See, the prefrontal cortex of your brain is designed to do one primary job, and that is to not allow you to succumb to your reflexes or what you know as your natural habits. So for example, you decide to turn the cold shower all the way on. Your reflex, your natural reflex, is your brain wanting you to get out of that. That's your reptilian brain. That's your survival brain. It says, oh, whoa, bro. This shit is way too cold. But what actually is happening is when you decide to fight that from a subjective standpoint, meaning you see the meaning and intention behind what this cold shower can do for you, then you can override the emotions, the physiological responses that you're feeling in your body to get out of the water. You can actually connect with those physiological responses and place a new label on them, a new meaning, one where you can attach yourself to cold showers and use it as a benefit, as a method to drive you forward in life, which in this case would be your health. Now, this is why emotions can't be necessarily taken as absolute truth, but it can neither be ignored. Because no matter what you're gonna do in life, emotion is gonna be the thing that you're gonna use to drive you forward. It's what you're gonna use to go towards pleasure or get away from pain. It is our connection of our conscious thoughts and our emotions that allows us to build the life that we desire to live. Emotions are the catalyst for change. So no matter what, it's necessary. It's inevitable. So how do we start to create a connection between our conscious thought and our emotions? Well, you have to really understand the concept of awareness. Now, awareness can mean a lot of things for everybody. Awareness for me is the ability to observe a thought objectively without my labels, judgments, or opinions attached to it. Understanding that whatever's happening here is not necessarily true. My experiences or my stories were true to me, but that's only from one perspective. You have to understand that in every single story and every single experience that you've ever had in your life has an infinite amount of perspectives. The way that you view yourself is only one perspective. Your mother views you differently, your father views you differently, your friends, every single one of your friends view you differently. So therefore, you must understand that who you perceive yourself to be isn't necessarily truth. And when you can accept that, is when you can observe your emotions and your thoughts with non-judgmental awareness. The ability to take the label off of the thought, as good or bad, as positive or negative, as beneficial for you or not. It just is. In order to be vulnerable, you need to be able to sit with the emotions, to have the courage to face everything that you don't desire to accept within you. This is important because those set of physiological responses are either gonna empower you to move forward or limit you. And if these things, if this fear, if this anxiety, if this stress is what's constantly stopping you from going to the gym, from telling the person that you want to connect with that you love them, from leaving your job, then you must first learn to accept those emotions. And the only way to do it is to allow yourself to feel those things. My father was a captain in the military. And if you know anything about military men, they are aggressive, they're assertive, and they're willing to express anger. They're actually trained to do that because in order to fight in a war, you need to be angry. You need to defend yourself, and anger is the primary emotion in doing that. So growing up with a military man, as my father, who's a great man, by the way, he always expressed anger. And for me as a child to express anger, as a young man to express anger to my father, in his eyes, he had a perspective that would be disrespectful. Now, I don't blame him for my ability to express anger, but I am aware that that is a catalyst and that is a reason of why I am the way I am. I understand that that's my program. But my awareness in understanding that, hey, maybe I have a problem with expressing anger. Maybe, just maybe, that's why I'm not assertive. And maybe that's why my relationships fail, because I'm so afraid to be like my father that I'm not willing to go into conflict or confrontation because I view that anger is something negative, and I never was trained to learn how to express those things. So I had to build awareness with that. I had to accept that. And with that comes a lot of power, because if you understand the ranges of your emotions, then that means you understand the capacities at which you can move forward in life. Because we know from the bottom that emotion is the driver for action. How do we actually begin to create new emotions that we know will make us feel better, or know that we're actually moving forward towards the direction that we desire? We have to create new experiences, a new set of physiological responses, one where we can attach a new meaning, a new story to that set of emotions. See, the way that our brain works is that we'll go through an experience and we'll label that experience as positive or negative. And if it's negative, we'll probably consider it a trauma. If the trauma was just a little too intense for us, then what we'll do is avoid the emotions that come along with that trauma, or any actions or experiences that bring that emotion back up. We're gonna do our best to avoid it. So first, being vulnerable is extinguishing that trauma. The act of vulnerability is speaking that truth that you currently hold inside your head. And if you do it enough times with a trained professional like a therapist or a psychologist, then you extinguish that story. You start to make it a little bit more boring. But that's not the only step. You have to create a new experience, and you have to attach it to that trauma or that negative story. And when you do that, you start to now identify as somebody else. And those emotions don't necessarily have a hold on you. You begin to experience a new identity, a new version of yourself that no longer identifies with those negative emotions. And if it's powerful enough, you've accepted those emotions and you learn that it's a part of who you are. And this is why we can't avoid emotions. We can use thought to go through an emotion. For example, if we're working out in the gym and we hate feeling pain and soreness and that lactic acid burning our muscles, we can tell ourselves, hey, keep fighting through. Or we can hire a coach to tell us to keep going make it through and punch through all of that pain. That's how we can use thoughts to get us through an emotion. But one day or another, you're going to have to accept it. See, as you get a coach to keep training you into thinking that way, and what the coach is actually doing is allowing you to accept a part of that. He's attaching, or she's attaching, a positive experience to what you would normally label a negative emotion. And that's powerful because we start to detach from the labels that we place on what we perceive as negative emotions in our body. See, there is no such thing as negative emotions. There's no such thing as positive emotions. There's just emotions. And when you learn to accept that part of yourself, that part of being a human being, you're going to learn what you're capable of. You're going to understand that you have so much potential. And that's the power of emotions.